What is going on today, guys? My name's Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have the absolute pleasure of having this 6.7 liter Cummins turbo diesel with us in this Ram 2500. Of course, I'm going to tell you guys three of the most common issues that I personally see as a heavy duty mechanic in this Cummins engine, as well as maybe a couple bonuses at the end there. I do really love the way these Rams looks, even though this is kind of a base. Well, actually, this isn't a base. This is a bighorn trim. It's kind of a lower bighorn trim, if you will. But I do like the way these trucks look. I think Ram always does a good job with their exterior styling, in my opinion. Obviously, we got rental white here because that's just what we got. The 5th gens, I think Ram did a really good job. I mean, these badges here, they just seem to keep on getting bigger and bigger, but I think that's kind of across the industry. Like I said, it is a bighorn trim, so you do get a couple little goodies inside there, which isn't too bad. But overall, a pretty good looking truck. And most importantly, let's pop the hood and let's talk about some issues with this Cummins turbo diesel. So this is actually a Cummins certified shop that I work in, so I do get to see the 6.7s or the ISB Cummins fairly frequently. I actually get to get my hands on them, which is nice. But by far the number one issue that I see, that we see the most frequently, is after treatment issues. Early on in the 4th gen Cummins, 2012, 2013, they had some major issues with their diesel particulate filters clogging up with their DPFs. And the main reason behind that was because Cummins did not want to utilize an SCR system. So an SCR system uses diesel exhaust fluid to help minimize nitrogen oxide gases. And so what Cummins did, instead of putting that system in, is they ran this engine quite a bit rich to really try and minimize or decrease the temperature of the cylinders, so that would minimize the nitrogen gases. Unfortunately, this resulted in the engine producing a ton of soot, which would end up clogging the DPF filters. Fortunately, Cummins moved away from that, and now this truck, every other truck, has a true SCR system, and that problem was somewhat resolved. But we do still see a lot of after-treatment system issues. It is an industry-wide thing. No matter what engine you have, after-treatment issues will arise. That's what it seems like anyways as a mechanic. Anything from electrical problems, wiring issues, sensors going bad, complete component failures, your DPF failing, SCR failing, diesel exhaust pump failing. It's a very large system, and when you combine that with lots of heat and very sensitive, delicate sensors, as well as a lot of wiring, you end up getting problems. And unfortunately, when you have an after-treatment problem, it derates the engine, and you kind of have to bring it to the dealer that has the software that can go in there and troubleshoot what the hell is going on. There are times, even with a 6.7 Cummins, where I'll spend multiple hours just trying to figure out what is the problem, because a lot of these engine codes arise from calculated values. So there's a bunch of sensors in here, and there's a computer, and based upon certain readings, it will throw a code because a certain efficiency doesn't meet a certain criteria, and therefore the engine is now derated. I have to go in with the computer and figure out what exactly is going on. And sometimes it takes a long time, regens, and there's a lot of data that has to go in to figure out what exactly is wrong with the after-treatment system. So that is kind of what I mean, how that is by far the number one issue that we see with the 6.7 Cummins. And not to single out Cummins because it is an industry-wide thing, but it is very true that this engine's number one issue right now is after-treatment problems. Now, I wish I could be more precise and give you guys exactly what components, what engine codes are being thrown most often, but it kind of just seems it's the luck of the draw, and oftentimes it is more than one code. It could be 4 codes thrown, 5 codes, maybe only 2 active codes, but then there's 3 inactive codes. So each troubleshoot is a little bit different than the next, and that is why, again, sometimes it takes quite a bit of time to truly figure out what is the problem. Now, the second thing is, what can you do about this? And unfortunately, there just really is not a magical fix, because These emission systems are mandated to be on this engine, no matter what, even if they are not necessarily the best thing for the engine. Now, there may not be a magical solution to completely solve the after-treatment dilemma here, well, unless you lose your emission systems in a boating accident or cut it off. There are ways to help prevent after-treatment issues throughout the life of your engine. The number one way to prevent after-treatment issues and problems that I've seen so far in this trade is to run these diesel engines hard and hot. Operators that run their trucks heavy and hard and continuous seem to do the best in terms of after-treatment issues, and this engine will be no different. If you guys are continuously going to run these things, get them up to temperature, operating temperature, get your after-treatment up to operating temperature where the truck can run what's called a passive regen, you're going to have a lot less struggles. Now, if you drive these things 5 miles to work and back every day, you're going to have problems. You're going to lower the life of the engine, and you are going to lower the life of your after-treatment system, unfortunately. Now, if you are not aware what a regen is, what a passive versus a forced regen is, I highly recommend, if you are looking at buying one of these engines or any modern diesel engine at this point, to kind of dig a little deeper and do some research on that, because driving habits and knowing what these engines need in order to minimize your after-treatment issues is critical with these modern diesel engines. And I mean, I don't know, if you guys are interested, I could even make a video about what exactly regen is. I could plug the computer into it, show you guys all the specs when a truck is regenning, and maybe dive a little deeper into what exactly the after-treatment system is and what it does. Let me know, because it's what I do for a living. Now, lastly on after-treatment systems, idle times. Idle times will not only kill these diesels, but it'll kill your after-treatment system. You do not want to idle these engines for any longer than you need to. Idling is not a good way to warm these things up. Limit your idle time as much as possible, and you will lengthen the life of your engine as well as the life of your after-treatment system, which is exactly what you guys, I'm sure, are looking to do. The second biggest issue that I see with these Cummins engines is EGR issues. So EGR coolers getting clogged, EGR check engine lights, EGR valves getting stuck, getting filled with soot. These engines tend to run very sooty, and when you have EGR flow, which is exhaust gas recirculation, basically it pulls gas from the exhaust and filters it back into the intake. It gets very sooty, and that soot can cause a lot of problems, and it does on these engines, unfortunately. Get on up here, these things are so tall. Okay, so EGR, it takes, like I said, exhaust gas and brings it back into your intake. So this is your exhaust gas cooler here. Exhaust gas comes up, it's very hot, obviously it was just in the engine. We want to cool it. So this is your exhaust gas cooler, and then it comes across the engine. And as you guys can hopefully see here, this is your exhaust gas valve, and this is what allows a certain amount of exhaust gases into your intake and back through the engine. And what that does is minimize, once again, nitrogen oxide gases, which are quite poisonous. So starting with the EGR cooler, I've changed a number of them. Basically, there's just little fins in there that help cool the EGR gas, and those just get filled with soot, and then the gas can't pass through it, or it's partially clogged.
So here's an EGR that we replaced pretty recently, and if you guys can see in there, look how sooted up that crap is. So all those fins there, that's where the coolant runs through and cools the gases, but it's just so sooted up in there.
And that will cause a check engine light because the pressure sensors on the EGR system aren't reading the right pressures. So if the engine demands a certain amount of EGR gas, it wants to see a certain pressure there. And if the pressures aren't met, it'll throw a check engine light, which is a D-rate code most of the time. Now, the second most common EGR fault is the EGR valve itself. I find this thing gets full of soot, and the only real way to actually clean it is you have to take the whole valve off, and basically we clean it out. I ended up putting a drill bit in some of the smaller orifices to just clean that hardened carbon soot out of it. And it's usually not the biggest job, but it's not necessarily the smallest job either. Now, like the rest of your after-treatment system, your EGR is going to be mandated to be on any modern diesel engine. Any engine made after 2003 does need to have EGR on it, unless, once again, you lose it in a boating accident or cut it off. But there are ways to try and help prevent your engine from getting too sooty. There are two ways to limit how much soot this engine makes. The first one is to limit your idle time. When these engines are idling, they're making a lot more soot than they would normally driving. The second way is to get these engines up to temperature. When these engines are cold, they do make a lot more soot once again. So if you are not getting these engines up to temperature, up to proper operating temperature, you're just going to be creating a lot of soot, which is going to go back through EGR. You're going to have a much higher chance of having a clogged EGR cooler, having an EGR valve that gets all clogged up. And you know, we also have to think that all that soot is going back through your engine. So the more you can minimize how much soot the engine makes, the more life you're going to get out of the engine. Now, the third most common thing that I personally see on these engines is your VGT, or your variable geometry turbo actuator, seizing up, or the vanes inside the turbo actually seizing up also. A VGT turbo, basically what that does in a nutshell is it allows a single turbo to act like a small turbo as well as a larger turbo, all in one neat little package. So hopefully you guys can see right here, this is your whole set turbo down there. And then right here, that is your turbo actuator right there. So with a variable geometry turbo, the ECU, or the engine, can control how big or small that turbo is going to act like. So when you were starting from a standstill, you want those vanes nice and tight, so you get a smaller acting turbo, which is going to send much more instantaneous boost into the engine, giving you a lot more power right off the line. However, when you get higher in the RPM bands, more speed behind you, you want that turbo to be able to build more boost, and so the turbo vanes expand. And in order to expand and contract those vanes, we have the actuator on there, which is again controlled by the ECU, and it'll control those vanes to either close down or open up. And what can happen is that actuator itself can fail, or the vanes in the turbo will seize, and you need a new turbo, unfortunately.
So this is actually a turbo I replaced pretty recently on a 6.7 Cummins. The problem with this turbo is that the actuator was very stiff, and you can see that's the line it should end up going to, and it just does not want to get there. So the VGT is seized somewhere in the internals. So right here we have a brand new turbo, and as you guys can see, it's able to go all the way across to their indent here, which means the VGT component is not seized. When you're at the low RPMs, in order to spool up quickly, the fins are closed, and then as you gain RPM, the fins open up and kind of act like a bigger turbo. So that's the gist behind a VGT turbo. However, these moving fins here and this actuator, there's an actuator actually plated to this, can fail, and these fins can actually seize up in there because this engine is so sooty. So that's what I mean by VGT turbo seizing.
A lot of engines run electronic VGTs on their diesels. I believe the POWERSTROKE as well as the Duramax both do as well. So it is a very tried and true technology that is in the industry. However, for whatever reason, it does seem like it's just a little bit of a more common thing on these Cummins. Not too sure why, but I have changed personally quite a few turbos on these 6.7 Cummins. Now, before you go replacing your turbo, there's a couple things you can just quickly make sure, because I've been burned before on this. So your turbo actuator, it is a 4-pin connector. I believe pin 4 and 1 are your power and ground, should have 12 volts between those. And then 2 and 3 are your J1939 communication wires, and you should have like 2.3 to 2.6 volts on both of those wires. Make sure you have that voltage, because if you don't, your turbo actuator is not going to work because there's a break in a wire somewhere. And usually the troubleshooting should indicate that you have a wiring issue, hopefully. The second thing is, if you have your powers and grounds there, pull the actuator off if you can. Sometimes those bolts seize and they snap, which sucks. But if you can get it off, you gotta drain the coolant, and you can freely turn the little latch that'll open and close those vanes, your turbo is good, you just have a failed actuator. Now, if that latch is seized solid, or it's sticking, or it can't go all the way over, then you're looking at potentially a brand new turbo. So those 3 issues are by far the most common issues that I see personally come through the doors here and that we fix. I have heard people talk about head gasket problems on these 6.7s. I've personally never seen it. I've never personally known anyone that has had a head gasket failure on these 6.7s. I'm sure they're out there, and I've worked on hundreds of these engines, but I've never seen one. The same thing applies to the heater grid bolt that seems to take out engines. It does seem like that's a real problem. I've just never personally run into it. Basically, there's a bolt in your heater grid. I guess it rots off and it will find its way down into the engine, and well, it's basically a catastrophic failure, because once you have a bolt rattling around in there, your engine's garbage. So luckily, there are some relatively cheap preventative fixes that you can do on your 6.7s. Quick little Google search, then there's lots of options to just completely mitigate that problem. Well, I told you we would have a bonus issue, and that's exactly what we're doing. The bonus issue is when Ram put a CP4 fuel pump on these 6.7 Cummins between 2019 and 2020. Luckily, in 2021, Ram realized that there were too many fuel system implosions, failures, and they went back to the old reliable CP3 fuel pump. I have no idea why Ram went with a CP4. Well, actually I do, because a CP4, you can get higher performance out of it, but the reliability is just not there. We saw it with the Duramaxes, the LML Duramaxes. Just not good. Tons of fuel failures. I don't know why Ford still runs a CP4 fuel pump. It's beyond me. But yeah, if you guys have a Cummins or looking at a Cummins that is a 2019 or 2020, make sure that they have gone back to Ram, because there's an open recall where Ram will actually put the old CP3 fuel pump back on these engines, because they are known to fail and catastrophically fail. If your CP4 fuel pump fails, it'll take out the entire fueling system, which is anywhere from a $10,000 to $15,000 repair if you're out of warranty. Well, let me know if you think I missed something in terms of issues with the 6.7 Cummins. I know I just talked about the issues. Overall, I think this is a fantastic diesel engine, and you can't go wrong when looking to buy one in terms of the engine itself. Next week, we will be towing with this thing, 14,000 pounds behind her, so we're gonna see what she's all about on the road with a load behind her. I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you agree, disagree, always like hearing from you guys. But hope you liked the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe, because we'd love to have you on board.